All right, let's dive into something fundamental today, something that, well, touches just about every human experience. Suffering.
Mm,
Not the physical kind necessarily, but that deep-seated psychological and emotional stuff.
right, the internal struggle.
Exactly. And our listeners sent us a book, Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. And it offers a pretty, well, maybe radical perspective on where all that actually comes from.
It really does challenge some common assumptions.
So our mission in this deep dive, let's try to unpack the core idea, pull out the key insights from the source, and, see if we can really get our heads around how our reality is generated from the inside out.
And be warned, as the host hinted, the book suggests the answer to ending suffering is uh, surprisingly simple.
Almost ridiculously simple, yeah.
And that simplicity is often what makes it tricky to grasp at first.
Oh,
The book kicks off with this ancient wisdom, this idea of the second arrow, often linked to the Buddha.
okay, the second arrow.
Yeah, so the first arrow is like the initial event. Something happens out there in the world, a loss, a setback, maybe physical pain, stuff you can't always control.
Right, life happens.
Life happens. But the second arrow, that's our reaction, our internal response to that first arrow.
Ah, okay. And the quote is, in life, we can't always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional.
Optional. Optional psychological suffering. That's the kicker.
Which, yeah, the author admits when he first encountered that it sounded, well, completely baffling. Optional. How could intense anxiety or fear possibly be optional?
Dude, just turn it off, right?
Exactly, if it were that easy. And he talks about spending years trying to fix himself, chasing happiness, chasing peace through, like, every method imaginable.
Therapy, meditation.
Diet, strict routines, different philosophies, retreats. He literally says, if you name it, I've probably tried it. And yeah, he might have gotten some small shifts, some incremental improvements, but that persistent underlying feeling, of not being enough, of stress being unfulfilled, that never really went away.
Still there, under the surface.
Yeah.
And the turning point, as he describes it in the source, wasn't finding some new technique or, another thing to do.
Right.
It was gaining a fundamental understanding, a shift in seeing how the human mind actually works, and crucially, where our moment-to-moment experience really comes from.
Okay, so this leads us to the core claim. It's almost audacious, really, drawing on Sydney Banks's work. The idea is we don't actually live in an objective reality. We live in a world of thought. As Sydney Banks put it, thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created.
It sounds so counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because it feels like the external world is causing our feelings. My boss yelled, therefore I feel bad.
Right, cause and effect.
But think about Nguyen's coffee shop example in the book. Two people. Same physical place, same coffee smell, same background noise, same strangers milling about.
Okay.
One person is feeling totally overwhelmed, anxious about their massive to-do list, maybe irritated by the person talking loudly on their phone, stressed out.
Yeah, I can picture that.
The other person feeling peaceful, maybe content, just enjoying the aroma. The background buzz doesn't bother them. Same external circumstances, completely different internal reality. What's the variable?
It has to be their internal world, their thinking.
Exactly. They're thinking about the situation. Or take the job example.
Oh.
Two people doing the exact same task, same colleagues, same office environment.
Right.
For one, it's a dream job. It's energizing, fulfilling. They love it. For the other, it's a living hell. Soul-crushing stress, can't wait to leave.
Wow, same job, different experience.
The job itself isn't inherently stressful or fulfilling.
Yeah.
Its reality for each person is created purely by how they think about it.
So just to be clear, it's not saying the external circumstances are imaginary, but our experience of them. That's filtered, generated by our thinking. Is that it?
Precisely. That's the core insight. And the book offers this really simple thought experiment to feel it out. Imagine something that causes you stress right now. Let's stick with hating your job.
Okay, got it.
You're at home, you're safe, maybe you're with your family, people you love, but just thinking about your job makes you feel stressed, maybe angry, maybe your shoulders tense up.
Yeah, definitely happens.
Now just for a second, imagine who you would be right there in that same physical spot without the thought, I hate my job. Just let that thought drift away for a moment. What's left?
Well, if I really let it go,
Huh.
it's lighter. Definitely. Peaceful, maybe. Less burdened.
Yeah. That sense of lightness, peace, freedom. The stress kind of melts away, doesn't it?
It does.
Which brings us right to the central, potentially world-rocking takeaway from this source. The root cause of all human psychological and emotional suffering is our own thinking. Not the job, not the difficult person, not the circumstances.
Yeah.
It's our thinking about those things.
Okay, but hang on. Because saying it's all in your head can sound really dismissive, like you're telling someone their very real pain isn't valid. How does the book handle that? Because feelings feel so real.
That's a super important point, and the book is clear. The feelings are absolutely real, 100%. The stress you feel is real stress. The anxiety is real anxiety. The author isn't saying you aren't feeling it. He's saying the thinking is what generated that feeling, that specific perception of reality for you in that specific moment. Your feelings are like a compass, always pointing towards your thinking. If you feel bad, it means you're caught up in thought.
Ah, like an indicator light.
Exactly. And the powerful implication, the really hopeful part, is this idea that the moment we stop thinking is when our happiness begins. Because when the thinking stops, that internally generated negative reality just dissolves.
In that Zen story, that
Yeah.
empty boat.
Yeah. Beautifully shown there, yeah. The monk gets furious when a boat bumps his. He's thinking about the careless person rowing it.
Right, building a whole story.
But then he looks, and the boat is empty. No careless person, just an empty boat drifting. And what happens?
The anger vanishes because the thinking stopped.
Precisely. The thinking about the supposed person caused the anger, not the bump itself.
Okay, so if thinking causes the suffering, does that mean thoughts themselves are the enemy? Do we need to, like, fight our thoughts, wage war inside our heads?
Great question. And this is where the book makes a really crucial distinction. It separates thoughts, often capitalized, the noun, from thinking, the verb.
Thoughts versus thinking. Okay.
So thoughts are described as like pure potential. Energetic raw materials, they're effortless, they just pop into our heads, like data streaming in, maybe divine downloads, the book suggests.
So it just appears.
Yeah, stuff just appears. And they're inherently creative, often expansive, positive, when they come from that deeper place beyond our personal conditioned minds. And crucially, you can't really control which thoughts show up.
Okay, so they're like ingredients just arriving in the kitchen. You didn't necessarily order them.
That's a great way to put it. And thinking. That's the act of grabbing those ingredients, those thoughts, engaging with them, analyzing them, judging them, spinning stories around them, kneading the dough, maybe over-kneading it.
The doing something with the thoughts.
Exactly. This is where we expend energy, where our personal biases, fears, and conditioning come in and start messing with the raw ingredients. And according to this source, this is where psychological suffering gets generated. Thinking, in this sense, is seen as potentially destructive because it takes the raw, neutral, or even positive energy of thought and twists it through the lens of our learned limitations and fears.
But wait a minute. You know, pretty much every self-help book I've ever skimmed says you need to think positive thoughts to feel positive. Affirmations, positive self-talk. You're telling me that's not quite the full picture.
The book definitely challenges that common wisdom, yeah. It gently suggests you test it from your own experience. Think about a time in your life, a real peak moment where you felt pure, unadulterated joy, or deep love, just pure positive feeling.
Okay, I can think of a few.
Now, honestly ask yourself, in that exact moment of peak feeling, what specific thoughts were you actively, consciously thinking? Were you telling yourself, I am joyful, I am joyful?
That's interesting. When I think back, it's true. In the peak of the feeling, I wasn't usually analyzing it or thinking about it. I was just in it, experiencing it. Maybe a thought like, wow, this is amazing, came after the feeling was already there.
Bingo. That's the insight the book points to. It argues that those positive emotions, peace, joy, love, clarity, connection, they aren't manufactured by thinking positive thoughts.
They aren't. Then where do they come from?
They are our natural state, our default setting. Think about a baby before all the conditioning piles on. They naturally exist in this state of open, curious, often loving awareness. It's the thinking, particularly what the book calls as effortful manual thinking, that actually blocks or obscures this natural state.
Whoa. So it's not the content of my negative thinking that's the primary problem. It's simply that I'm engaging in that strenuous analytical thinking at all.
That's the core argument.
Precisely.
The book uses this idea like a thoughtometer. The intensity of the negative emotion you feel, stress, anxiety, anger, is directly proportional to how much of that manual analytical thinking you're doing.
More thinking, higher stress.
Yeah, the more frantic the thought engagement, the higher the stress dial goes. Conversely, the positive emotions, peace, flow, love, are inversely proportional to the amount of thinking.
Less thinking, more peace.
Exactly. The less lost you are in thought, the more space there is for your natural state of well-being, your clarity, your love, to just surface effortlessly. So it's the act of strenuous thinking, not necessarily the specific negative thought itself, that's identified as the direct cause of the suffering.
Okay, that's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. And this whole process, this moment-by-moment creation of our internal reality, is explained in the source through what are called the three principles, first articulated by Citibanks. They're presented as like the fundamental operating system behind the human experience: universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought.
Okay, the three principles, the core mechanics. Can you break those down briefly?
Sure. Universal mind is described as, well, the formless intelligence behind life. The life force, the source of all potential, all insight, all new ideas, the interconnectedness of everything.
The source code, almost?
Kind of, yeah. And the book suggests when we connect with this, often in moments of quiet or insight, we feel that sense of wholeness, peace, creativity, expansive love. Our personal thinking is what creates the illusion that we're separate from this source.
Got it. The potential, the energy, the connection. What about the next one?
Universal consciousness. This is simply awareness itself. It's what allows us to perceive, to be aware of whatever form is being created by thought. Without consciousness, there'd be no experience.
Okay, so mind is the potential. Consciousness is the awareness of it.
You got it. And universal thought is the principle that gives form to that formless energy of universal mind. It's our ability to create form, perception, concepts from that infinite potential. It's the tool we use.
The way potential gets turned into experience through our awareness.
Exactly. So together, these three principles explain how our reality is constantly being generated from the inside out. It's not the external world beaming experiences into us. It's generated within us through the interplay of mind, consciousness, and our use of thought.
Okay. So, if thinking, that verb, that manual effort, is the problem, how on earth do you actually stop doing it? Does this mean trying to become some kind of thoughtless zombie? I mean, the author himself worried about becoming a couch potato.
Yeah, that's a really common fear, and the book is very clear on this point. The goal isn't to eliminate thoughts. Thoughts are essential. They're the raw material for insight, creativity, navigating the world. That's impossible and undesirable.
Okay, good. So what is the goal then?
It's about reducing the time you spend lost in thought. Less time engaging with, analyzing, wrestling with, and believing the thoughts that cause distress. Less manual operation. More allowing thoughts to just pass through.
Less gripping onto them, more observing them float by.
Exactly. And here's the really simple, almost paradoxical key from the source. You don't do anything specific to stop the thinking. You don't fight it. The awareness that you were thinking and the understanding that that thinking is the direct cause of your feeling in that moment. That awareness is what allows the thinking to naturally settle down.
So just seeing the mechanism helps you detach.
Yes. Becoming conscious of how the suffering is being created helps you step back from it naturally. It loses its grip on you.
It's like just noticing the engine is racing, and the noticing itself kind of helps it idle down.
That's a great way to think about it. The book uses this wonderful analogy of dirty water. If you have a glass of cloudy, muddy water, and you try to purify it by stirring it vigorously or trying to aggressively filter it right there in the glass, what happens?
You just kick up more dirt, makes it worse.
Exactly. But if you just let the glass sit undisturbed,
The dirt settles to the bottom, the water becomes clear.
right, our natural state of mind is like clear water, clarity, peace, wisdom. But our strenuous thinking constantly stirs up the dirt of confusion, insecurity, and suffering. Just letting it sit, being aware without struggling against it, allows that thinking to settle down on its own.
And the quicksand analogy, too, struggling just sinks you deeper. Spot on. Trying to force yourself not to think or to analyze your way out of anxiety is like fighting quicksand. Letting go, trusting your innate mental buoyancy, allows you to naturally surface back to clarity and peace. That's your inherent state, always available when the thinking settles.
But is it okay to keep getting caught, to like bounce back and forth between feeling clear and then getting lost in thought again? Because that feels more realistic.
Oh, absolutely. The book really emphasizes that this oscillation is completely normal.
Yeah.
It's part of being human. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, as some say.
Right.
The goal isn't some impossible state of perpetual thought-free bliss. It's simply to minimize the time spent lost in the density and distress of anxious thinking. And the key reassurance is that the state of peace, love, and clarity is always there inherently. It's just temporarily obscured.
Like the sun behind the clouds. Exactly like the sun behind the clouds. It hasn't gone anywhere. The moment you remember the truth, My thinking is creating this feeling right now, the clouds begin to part, and you naturally start returning to your baseline state of well-being.
Okay, that's reassuring. But let's circle back to the practical side, the couch potato fear. If I'm not supposed to be grinding away, analyzing, planning endlessly, how do I actually function? How do I pursue goals, build a career, achieve anything significant?
It's a really valid concern, and the book tackles it head on. It points to experiences that actually many people already have, maybe without realizing the connection. Think about being in a state of flow
Uh,
or the zone.
okay, yeah, like when you're totally absorbed in something.
Exactly. Maybe it's writing, coding, playing music, gardening, sports.
Mhm.
You're completely engrossed. Time just disappears. Now, what kind of frantic, effortful, analytical thinking is happening in those peak flow moments?
No, none really. Or maybe thoughts are just happening effortlessly, like ideas just flow through, but I'm not forcing them or judging them.
Precisely. Peak performance, doing your best work, feeling fully engaged. It happens in a state of relative non-thinking. The Japanese martial arts concept of mushin, mind without mind, points to this. A mind free of ego, free of thought, allowing spontaneous trained response.
So overanalyzing actually hinders performance.
Often, yes. Doubt, hesitation, insecurity, second guessing, where do they come from? They come from thinking. Accessing your peak potential often requires quieting that analytical mind. And this applies directly to goals and ambitions. The book suggests the crucial factor isn't the goal itself, but where the desire for that goal originates. It makes a distinction between goals born from desperation and goals born from inspiration.
Desperation goals versus inspiration goals. Okay, what's the difference there?
Goals from desperation tend to arise from thinking, from analyzing your current situation and identifying a lack, a problem, a scarcity. They often feel heavy, like a burden, something you have to achieve to fix something you perceive as wrong or missing.
Like, I need to make more money so I can finally feel secure, or I have to get this promotion to prove I'm good enough.
Exactly those kinds of things. They're often driven by a need to escape discomfort or gain external validation. They're based on a logical analysis of your current reality, which naturally limits the possibilities to what your thinking mind can currently conceive based on past experience. And the kicker is, even if you achieve them, they often don't bring that lasting fulfillment you were hoping for.
Because the feeling you wanted wasn't actually in the external goal.
Right. It can only come from your state of mind, from within. That's the constant chase.
Okay, so what about the other kind? Inspiration goals.
Goals from inspiration, according to the source, tend to come from thought, with a capital T, from that deeper intuitive space, like those divine downloads we mentioned, or just an overflowing of creative energy from source. They feel different. They feel light, exciting, expansive.
Less like a should and more like a want to.
Exactly. It's something you feel genuinely called or drawn to create or do, purely for its own sake, not primarily as a means to escape something or gain something external. They often feel bigger or more creative than what your logical mind might deem realistic because they aren't limited by past data or analysis. They come from a feeling of abundance, a natural desire to express or contribute something.
So how do you tell the difference in the moment? When an idea pops up, is it desperation or inspiration?
The book suggests you pay close attention to the feeling attached to the idea. Desperation goals feel contracted, heavy, maybe urgent in a stressful way, driven by fear or perceived lack. Inspiration goals feel expansive, light, energizing, exciting, driven by a natural pull or desire. It's a want to, not a have to or a should.
Okay, feel the feeling. And how do you tap into more of that inspiration side and, bypass the desperate analysis part?
Well, the inspired thoughts, those ideas and deeper desires, they tend to arise naturally when the mind is quieter, like a child's uninhibited dreams before the buts and hows kick in. The key, the book suggests, is to stop thinking about them so hard once they arise.
Don't overanalyze the inspired idea.
Exactly, because that's where the doubt, the fear, the how could I possibly do that? Thinking creeps in and limits it. Thinking acts like a dam on that natural river of inspiration. To connect more directly, the book offers this really powerful question to ask yourself, designed to bypass the usual thinking patterns.
Okay.
Ask yourself, if I had infinite money, already traveled the world, had absolutely no fear of failure or judgment, and didn't receive any recognition or reward for what I do, what would I do or what would I create just for the sheer joy of it?
Wow. That strips away literally every external condition or perceived limitation.
It does. And the advice is to trust the very first answer that pops into your head before your analytical mind has a chance to jump in and say that's silly or that's impossible.
So just see what arises in that space.
Yeah. To a mind that's momentarily free from the constraints of its usual analytical thinking, infinite possibilities for joyful creation and contribution can suddenly become visible. And, this whole idea of creating from abundance, from a place of want to rather than need to, it ties in really beautifully with the book section on unconditional love.
Oh, yeah. How so?
The author shares this really touching story about asking his girlfriend at the time, McKenna, why she loved him. He was maybe expecting, a list of reasons.
Right.
Because you're funny, because you're kind.
The usual justification.
Right. But instead she just looked at him and said something like, I don't know, I just know that I love you. And he had this insight. He realized that having reasons for loving someone actually makes the love conditional.
Huh. How does that work?
Well, if you love someone because they are funny or successful or good-looking, what happens if they stop being funny, or they lose their job, or their looks change?
The reason for the love is gone, so the love might go too.
Exactly. It becomes dependent on their performance. Their traits remaining the same. Her love, he realized, was unconditional because it wasn't based on his external qualities or actions. It was simply an outpouring from within her own capacity for love, given freely, without needing conditions to be met or expecting something specific back. It comes from that infinite wellspring inside, not from analyzing external reasons.
Wow. Okay. I see the connection now. And this parallels conditional versus unconditional creation.
Absolutely. It's the same principle. Conditional creation is doing something for a specific external outcome, creating for the money, for the validation, for the fame. The creation itself is just a means to an end.
And the process often feels like a struggle, right? Like you're chasing something.
Often, yeah. It feels like chasing because you believe the feeling you want, peace, security, joy, resides in that external outcome. And the book argues it never truly satisfies, even if you get the outcome, because the feeling you are ultimately seeking can only ever come from your own state of mind from within.
Okay, so what's the alternative? Unconditional creation.
That's creating simply because you want to create. For the pure joy and expression of the process itself, the creation is an end in itself, not just a stepping stone. It comes from that place of feeling already whole, already abundant, and wanting to share or express that.
And here's the paradox, isn't it? When you create unconditionally, just for the love of it, that's often when you do experience the joy, the fulfillment, maybe even the external abundance you thought you had to chase so hard.
That's exactly the paradox the book points to. You find the feeling you were looking for in the process of creating from inspiration, not as a reward at the end.
And that state of unconditional creation, just like finding peace, it requires less of that effortful thinking.
Yes, absolutely, because your thinking mind, your ego, will immediately question the point of doing something if there's no guaranteed external payoff or logical reason. Why bother if you might not succeed? What's the ROI? It takes a quieter mind, one that's more connected to that deeper intuitive flow, that source, to create from a place of pure desire, trust, and abundance. Now, it's really important to acknowledge, and the book does this well, that even after you have these amazing moments of clarity, these glimpses of peace and non-thinking,
Yeah.
the old patterns can definitely creep back in.
Oh, yeah, the worry, the anxiety, the doubt, they don't just vanish forever.
Not usually, no. It's like the ego, the conditioned thinking mind, senses it's losing its grip, its control, and it will often try to pull you back into the familiar territory of analyzing, worrying, problem solving.
Like an old habit just kicking back in automatically.
Exactly. But the beautiful thing is, the solution remains incredibly simple. It's not about fighting it harder, it's just about noticing it.
Catching yourself in the act.
Yes. Catch yourself thinking. Notice the anxious feeling that comes with it and just remember, oh, right, this feeling is coming from this thinking right now. That simple awareness, that recognition of the cause and effect, is what starts to dissolve the illusion's power.
Like seeing the snake in the corner was just a piece of rope all along.
Perfect analogy. The initial fear reaction might still happen out of habit, but the moment you recognize it's just rope, the ongoing fear it was generating starts to fade. You step out of the story the thinking was creating.
And presumably all that energy that was previously tied up in that frantic, anxious thinking, that must get freed up, right?
A tremendous amount of energy.
Yeah.
And the book suggests using that freed up energy wisely, channeling it into those inspired goals we talked about, rather than just letting it get reabsorbed by new worries or distractions.
So having some inspiring projects ready can give that energy a positive direction.
It can definitely help.
Yeah.
The book also mentions simple practices, like maybe having morning activation rituals, things that deliberately get you into a state of flow or peace or inspiration right away, rather than letting the mind default to anxious planning first thing. It helps build momentum from a better state.
What other kinds of obstacles does the book mention that might keep us stuck in those old thinking patterns even after we get the core idea?
Well, one big one is just a reluctance to let go of the thinking itself.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been successful, you might credit your analytical mind, your worry, your constant planning for that success.
If I stop worrying, everything will fall apart.
Exactly.
Hmm?
But the book argues that what got you here, often driven by effort and maybe some desperation, won't necessarily get you there to a place of deeper peace, fulfillment, and maybe even greater, more effortless success. It requires a leap of faith.
Faith in what?
Faith that there's a deeper intelligence available beyond your finite analytical mind. Faith that peace and abundance are actually your natural state, not something you have to constantly struggle and strain to earn or maintain.
And fear must be a big one too, right? Fear of the unknown that comes with letting go of that feeling of control.
Fear is huge, and the book makes a really bold statement about it. Fear is thinking. Without a thought projecting a negative outcome into the future, there is no fear in the present moment.
Wow. Fear equals thinking.
Yeah. And that unknown, that space of possibility where intuition and inspiration live, it feels terrifying to the conditioned thinking mind, precisely because it can't predict or control what will happen there. But the insight is, when you recognize fear as just thinking, it starts to lose its paralyzing power. Courage isn't the absence of fear thoughts, it's the willingness to act despite them, knowing they aren't necessarily true. The book basically says everything you truly want lies on the other side of that fear thought.
What about that weird feeling sometimes, like something must be wrong if you actually feel too peaceful or content, like you should be striving or worrying about something?
Huh. Yes, that's another common trick of the mind the book flags. It's like the mind has been conditioned for so long to associate struggle, worry, and busyness with being productive or important or safe.
The hustle culture mentality.
Right. So when peace arises naturally, the old programming might kick in and say, wait, this is weird. Aren't you forgetting something? Shouldn't you be doing more? But the book argues forcefully that genuine productivity, creativity, and even material abundance actually increase when you operate from a state of non-thinking, clarity, and peace. You just have to trust that state, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. You get to choose the perceived safety but actual confinement of familiar suffering, or the freedom and potential of the unknown clarity. And if you slip back, it's okay. It's just noticing, remembering the principle, and gently returning again and again.
Okay, so practically speaking then, how do you make decisions? Big life decisions, small daily choices. If you're not supposed to rely on endless pro-con lists and anxious analysis, how do you know what to do?
The book suggests starting by letting go of the intense pressure we put on ourselves to make the single right decision. It argues there aren't really wrong decisions in some absolute cosmic sense.
Like piano keys. Some notes might sound better together, but no key itself is wrong.
That's a great analogy they use, yeah. Some choices might feel more or less pleasant based on our thinking about them afterwards, but the guidance system is that feeling arising from the thinking, not some inherent rightness or wrongness of the choice itself. So instead of relying primarily on that external validation, analyzing data, getting everyone else's opinion, making endless lists, which often just generates more anxiety,
You rely on what's the alternative.
your gut feeling,
Yeah.
your intuition, that quiet inner knowing. The book says you almost always know deep down what feels like the right next step for you. The problem is we often drown out that quiet inner voice with the noise of our own analytical thinking and the clamor of external opinions.
So trust the inner GPS more than the external maps.
Exactly. Your intuition is your personal guidance system. It knows the way, even if the route seems illogical or completely unexpected to your thinking mind. It's guaranteed, the book suggests, to get you where you truly need to be, even if you can't see the whole path laid out neatly in advance.
But what if you genuinely feel stuck, like you've quieted the mind and you still have absolutely no idea what the next step is?
That's where trusting what the book calls infinite intelligence, or universal mind, comes in, that source of all new ideas, insights, and solutions that we talked about with the three principles. Our personal thinking, especially when it's stuck in, actually blocks our access to this deeper wisdom. Remember that Henry Ford quote the book uses.
The one about whether you think that you can or can't, you're right.
That's the one. If you're stuck in the thought, I don't know, you effectively shut off the possibility of knowing. But when you can quiet that I don't know thinking, let go of the need to figure it out right now with your limited personal mind, you create space for that deeper knowing, that unexpected insight to surface. The book has this great line in the summary: know that you already know, and if you don't know, know that you can know what you need to know.
It's about trusting that the wisdom is available, even if I can't access it through effortful thought.
Precisely. Trusting that intelligence beyond your personal intellect. And that intuition, that inner wisdom, it's actually speaking to you constantly. Through those quiet nudges, those gut feelings, those subtle shifts in how something feels, it often contradicts logic or what society deems sensible. Following it definitely requires faith, because it operates in that space of the unknown, the realm of possibility beyond past experience.
Where the thinking mind feels uncomfortable.
Exactly. But the book insists that stepping into that unknown, guided by that quiet inner knowing instead of loud outer fear, is where the unexpected breakthroughs, the miracles, the real abundance and fulfillment appear.
So accessing these miracles, receiving creative solutions, creating what we truly desire, it all seems to hinge on creating space. Space by lessening the grip of our thinking.
That's the essence of it, exactly. The classic Zen story of the master and the scholar with the overflowing teacup illustrates it perfectly, doesn't it? You can't pour new insights, new knowledge, new possibilities into a mind that's already completely full of its own opinions, assumptions, and noisy thinking. You have to empty the cup first, create space.
Makes sense. Like athletes needing rest days for muscle growth.
Or like those stories of creative geniuses, Edison napping, Einstein playing the violin. They weren't just goofing off, they were creating mental space, allowing solutions to arise from beyond their conscious analytical efforts.
It reminds me of that Einstein quote. We can't solve problems by using the same level of consciousness we were at when we created them.
Exactly. You need access to insights from a different level, from that deeper intelligence, that universal mind. And that access comes when the analytical, problem-focused thinking mind takes a break. The book actually offers a simple process for inviting these insights when you're feeling stuck or facing a challenge.
Okay, what's the process?
First, awareness. Notice you're caught in stressful thinking, and recognize that the thinking itself is creating the negative feeling. See the mechanism.
Step 1, see the thinking.
Step 2, create space. Consciously choose to surrender the manual effort of trying to figure it out. Let go of the how and the when. Trust that the answer or solution exists within that deeper intelligence and will come. Just be open.
Step 2, let go and trust.
Step 3, awareness of feelings. As you surrender the thinking, pay attention to how you feel. Lean into any glimmers of peace or relief. If difficult feelings remain, just meet them with awareness, maybe even love, without trying to force them away. And in that space of allowing, the answer, the insight, the next step often just appears effortlessly when you least expect it sometimes.
It sounds incredibly simple again, almost deceptively so.
And the book strongly suggests that simplicity is actually a hallmark of truth. Complexity, confusion, struggle there. Those come from our thinking mind trying to figure everything out, control everything. The fundamental truth of how our experience is created isn't something you grasp through intense intellectual gymnastics. It's something you feel and know from a deeper, quieter place.
So the core message really distilled down.
Yeah, the book hammers it home again and again in the summary. Thinking is the root cause of psychological suffering. Realizing this is the key to release and returning to your natural state of peace, love, joy. Your reality is always a perception created by your thinking. Thinking is the cause, not the effect, of your moment-to-moment experience. Thoughts aren't facts. They only have power if you believe them. Negative feelings, they're just a guidance system, signaling you're lost in thought and misunderstanding how things work. Non-thinking equals flow, connection to source, infinite intelligence. Effortful thinking severs that connection, strengthening the ego. Thoughts themselves can be divine downloads. Thinking is the manual effort that often messes them up. Your finite mind is limited. Infinite intelligence is always available when you're not blocking it with thinking. Peace, love, joy, clarity. They are your default setting, the mind's natural state. Nothing is inherently wrong. Thinking makes it seem so. You aren't broken. You just need to see how thinking creates suffering. You are more than your thinking, more than your body. Letting go connects you to infinite love and joy. Making space for intelligence makes space for you. Trusting it brings insights. Prioritizing that space changes everything.
Wow, that's a powerful distillation. The book also touches briefly on how our environment and habits can support this state, doesn't it? Like removing triggers or creating spaces that feel peaceful.
Yes, exactly. They aren't the fundamental cause of suffering or peace. That's always the thinking. But our environment and habits can definitely make it easier or harder to settle the mind, to return to that quiet state and maybe stay there a bit longer. Things like choosing work that feels inspiring, consciously creating calm spaces, or addressing destructive habits by understanding the underlying feeling or thought that triggers them. It all helps support creating more of that internal space.
So ultimately, the core message from this deep dive into don't believe everything you think seems to boil down to this really profound simplicity. The source of your psychological suffering isn't actually outside you. It's not the world. It's in your engagement with, your belief in, your own thinking. And when you quiet that thinking, even for a moment,
You naturally uncover your inherent state of peace, love, and joy. It was always there, just waiting underneath the noise. And even if you forget, which we all do, the insight itself, the understanding that thinking causes suffering, expands your consciousness permanently. You can always come back just by noticing, remembering, and letting go again. The truth is felt, known, not just intellectually figured out.
so the invitation for you, the listener, isn't to try and control every thought or force positivity. It's simpler. Just observe your own thinking. Notice how it connects to your feelings. Use those feelings as your guide. That negative feeling just means you're caught up in believing some stressful thought right now, and trust that deeper inner wisdom that's always available in the quiet.
And importantly, the book suggests that living more from that place of peace and non-thinking doesn't just change your internal world. It creates this vibrant, authentic presence that naturally and positively impacts everyone and everything around you, often without you even trying.
So here's the thought maybe to carry with you from this deep dive. If, as the source suggests, psychological suffering is primarily the result of believing and getting entangled in our own thinking, what becomes possible in your life starting right now when you begin relating to your thoughts not as undeniable facts or urgent commands, but simply as energetic raw materials like clouds just passing through the vast sky of your awareness? What opens up then?